So the question is, when you're running a rig on your chute, do you make adjustments to the rest of your spread to maybe help with a bite or to get a reactionary bite in a second line? I think it's kind of what it's asking. And color, if we ever match colors up. Anybody have a take on this?
Yeah, I mean, I have a take on it. I hope it answers your question, but I think that, you have to think of your spread and how it interacts with each other, whether your chute rigger's bringing in the fish, or that's what's taking the bites, or that's, what's causing them to hit your dipsy divers. And a lot of times we'll see that like green is working, or meat rigs are working, and I try not to wholesale on everything. So like, let's say if I have a big white paddle and it's firing on the chute rigger, typically what I want to do is put a fly and paddle on everything, but I like to keep my dipsies something different, because I see that the bite changes to where 1 second they'll be hitting meat, or 1 second they'll be hitting spoons. So I think that I keep my dipsies and my chute rigger something different, whether it's the color or the presentation. I like to stay ahead and not wholesale on what's working. I don't know if that helps at all, but
You consider, underwater, your whole presentation is coming through like a flock of geese. Sure. And something is first.
Yep.
And what do you typically like to run first? And that's typically on your rigger.
Yeah, usually a big paddle. Like Paul said, sometimes we run meat as farthest down as we can. But either way, it's either a 10 or 11-inch paddle. Whether or not that's actually taking the fish, I think most people could agree that if you're having success, that's at least bringing them in. Like you said, that's what they see first, draws their attention. If it's something smaller bait profile on your dipsies that's working better, that's what they're going for. I think it's good to have something different on your dipsies, so that big paddle brings them in. If they don't like it, they might see a smaller spoon on your dipsy on the outside, and that's what they actually go for.
I think it's one of those things too where you can make a change in your spread that can adversely affect something that's working.
Right.
You have an out down that's working, and then you put a big rotator on your low diver and try to put it in the same zone, and all of a sudden your out down stops.
Yep.
First thing you do, pull that diver.
Yeah.
And I mean, more times than not, that out down will start to fire again, or vice versa.
Yeah.
Having a rotator on your out down because your low diver's working, your low diver stops.
Yep.
But I'm a huge advocate of one big flash in your spread. Usually I like to have it, on a chute or somewhere where I can stretch it out so that it's back farther and it's bringing fish in. It's bringing fish into my coppers. It's bringing fish into my lead cores. It's bringing fish all the way to the boat. I'm a big believer. It's very seldom that I don't have a 11-inch paddle on my chute.
It's not a secret.
Yeah,
I mean, probably 80% of the boats have it for a reason. I mean, it's not.
But sometimes, especially Ludington, I imagine Grand Haven gets slightly congested.
Yeah.
That's what we like to call it in Ludington, congestion.
Yeah.
But you put 300 boats and every one of them has 11-inch paddle, and you go by pulling all 4-inch plugs, all of a sudden you can't keep anything in the water.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you never know.
Yeah.
I think the boat next to you, their spread could affect your spread is just the same way. Especially if you're, in Ludington, we tend to be able to just talk like this between the boats.
You can see what they're running.
We don't have to use a radio there.
Yeah.
But if you're running that close to each other, I think it all can
Absolutely.
all can have an effect for sure.
So, extrapolating on that, how would you recommend running a small boat spread, say a 3 or 6 rod?
That's a real small spread.
Yeah.
Out there, and I've gone to a small boat, and
I think that one thing, especially charter boats, I think I'm guilty of it. I like to put out a lot of rods, and I don't always think it's the right thing to do. I know guys that are very successful tournament fishermen that they minimize.
Yep.
They might go down to 3 rods, even though they can run 9, and it's just for the stealth, for the quiet. You got to think like, everyone thinks, oh, your motor's loud, your transducer's loud. All of these things are making, well, all of your baits are loud too.
Yeah,
especially like a big rotator with a meat rig. There's a lot of noise going on with that. And I think that the flash can be noise too.
Oh yeah.
So with smaller boats, I would keep the same concepts. I would still have a rotator. You know, I might not run a bunch of rotators. It's hard to run a bunch of rotators on a small beam boat. You tend to get one big rotator after a while.
Yeah.
But you know, the same thing. I like to keep, and I'm a firm believer in keeping them honest.
Yeah.
You know, you go out there and you put out a spread that's all meat rigs, and they don't want to bite meat rigs.
Exactly.
You ain't catching nothing.
Yeah.
You know, I think the best fishermen out there, they put out a spread every day with a lot of variety, and they quickly adjust to what's working. And be it in water column depths, or if it's you know, bait presentation, that sort of thing.
Yeah. I think with smaller boats,
Well, and you run a smaller boat.
yeah, I
so-
do. And there's sometimes it's just me and my mate go out and pre-fish, and we'll just run 6 rods. And I think, you know, it's nice to spread it out and have some board rods and some dipsies and some downriggers. But I think you got to have those deep baits. If you're only picking 3, you got to have at least a diver and a downrigger. I think one of the, I don't even want to say best kept secret, but you know, everybody could catch fish when the sun's coming up. But when you try to drum up bites later in the day, you got to have baits that are, you know, way down deep. So, you know, you just can't do that with coppers. And even if you can, you run a 600 copper, nobody wants to reel that in all day. So,
Absolutely not.
I mean, I would run 2 downriggers and a dipsy, to be honest. I think it's important to fish deep. So,
I think you hit it. The dipsies are deadly.
yeah, yep.
Downriggers are really precise.
Sure.
And you can get a bait down there. You can't, especially on a small boat, you have 2 downriggers. You can't run, if you run 2 baits stretched way out 120 and 110 down, they're probably going to come up together at some point.
Yep.
It's hard to do it on a small
Sure
boat.
is,
So,
yep.
you know, not getting tangles
Yeah.
is very important too.
That's
But
very true.
divers are, you know, the farther you put them out, the farther they swim away from the boat. It's a
Yep.
very deadly technique.
Even happens on the big boats when we're running 3 rotators across the back.
Oh yeah.
Turn too sharp.
Nothing like when you start seeing 2 rods
Yeah.
doing the same
Simultaneously,
thing, the same exact rhythm.
Yeah.
It's usually not good.